Imagine walking into a bank. You ask for a loan. The banker types a few numbers, and suddenly, money exists. Not printed, not earned, not transferred, created. Here's the paradox. Banks lend money they don't actually have, and the entire global economy runs on it. So the real question isn't where does money come from? The real question is, who gave banks the power to create it? This is the professor of money, a place where money moves nations, power bends truth, and history hides its darkest secrets. Most people believe banks are vaults. You deposit money, they keep it safe, they lend your money to someone else. That story is comforting, and completely wrong. In reality, over 90% of all money today exists only as numbers on screens. No cash, no gold, just digital promises. And those promises begin inside banks. To understand how this happened, we need to rewind history. Hundreds of years ago, banks actually were vaults. Goldsmiths stored gold for merchants. Receipts were issued. Those receipts became money. Then one goldsmith noticed something. Most people never came back for their gold. So the goldsmith tried something dangerous. He issued more receipts than gold he owned. Nothing collapsed. That moment changed history, because banks learned something terrifyingly powerful. Money doesn't need to exist, as long as people believe it does. Here's the modern version. You deposit $1,000 in a bank. The bank doesn't lock it away. It keeps maybe $100 in reserve. The other $900 is lent out. That loan becomes a deposit somewhere else, which is lent again, and again, and again. From your original $1,000, $9,000 or more can be created. Not printed, not stolen, just typed into existence. This is called fractional reserve banking. But here's the secret most people never hear. Banks don't wait for money. They create it first. When a bank gives a loan, it doesn't transfer existing money. It creates a new deposit on a screen, basically a promise. But the borrower thinks it's real money. The seller accepts it as real money, and the government taxes it as real money. That's how it becomes real. And for this, economies grow fast, bubbles form faster. But there's a catch. Every dollar created this way comes with debt attached. And the interest? That money is never created. Here's the impossible math. If all money is created as debt, and interest is owed on top, then collectively, there is never enough money to repay all debt. Someone must always default. This forces constant expansion. More loans, more money, and more debt, until something breaks. So someone can think this is a bug in the system. But no, this is the engine of the system. After all these things, banks rely on one fragile thing, and that is trust. If everyone asks for their money at once, the system collapses. That's called a bank run. It's why banks fear panic more than bad loans. But why governments insure deposits? Why central banks exist? In 2008, trust vanished. Banks had created mountains of money through risky loans. When defaults began, the illusion cracked. And suddenly, money disappeared. When the system started breaking, governments didn't stop to ask questions. They didn't ask people what they needed. They moved fast. They moved hard. Trillions of dollars showed up almost overnight. Not earned, not saved, just created. They called it a rescue. They said it was about stability, about saving the economy. But that money didn't reach the people who lost their jobs. It didn't protect those who did everything right and saved carefully. It didn't make life easier for families just trying to stay afloat. It went where it always goes first. Banks, financial institutions, big corporations. The core of the system that failed. The pain was shared by everyone else. Quietly, slowly. But when things recovered, the rewards stayed at the top. And while most people were focused on getting by, something else was happening. Inflation. No warning, no debate, just prices creeping higher. Savings stopped stretching as far. Groceries, fuel, rent, everything cost more. Paychecks tried to keep up. Many didn't. At the same time, assets took off. Stocks, property, investments. If you already owned them, you got richer by doing nothing. If you relied on wages, you fell behind, working harder than ever. That's why inequality grows after every crisis. Money doesn't enter the system evenly. It never has. Those closest to it feel the benefit first. Everyone else feels the cost later. It's not an accident. It's how the system works. Quietly, steadily, value moves upward, from the many to the few. Today, money doesn't arrive with trucks or presses. It appears quietly, digitally, with a keystroke. Central banks create it. That's the base layer, the oxygen of the system. Then commercial banks expand it through loans, through leverage, through promises stacked on top of promises. Together, they decide where money flows. And where it flows, things grow. Where it slows, life gets harder. And when it stops, everything breaks. This system isn't evil. It builds companies, drives innovation, creates cities, jobs, and futures. But it also bends reality. Easy money pushes prices higher. Assets inflate. Debt grows faster than value. People feel richer until they aren't. Because the system doesn't really ask, should this money exist? Does it help real lives? It asks only one thing. Can this debt be sold? As long as people believe, it works. When belief cracks, it freezes. And when it breaks, the cost is never shared equally. Today, this system cannot stop. It has lost the ability to rest. Because in the modern world, stopping doesn't mean a pause. It means a total, systemic collapse. Every government on this planet is currently trapped inside the teeth of these gears. Every corporation, from the tech giants in Silicon Valley to the shipping conglomerates in Singapore, depends on the rotation. Your pension, your mother's retirement fund, the stock portfolio in your banking app, it's all wired into the same live current. Debt isn't a side effect of our economy anymore. We have to stop thinking of it as a bug. It is the foundation. It is the concrete slab upon which every skyscraper of progress is built. Growth is no longer an option for a prosperous year. It is a mandatory requirement for survival. If the growth slows, even by a fraction of a percent, the debts cannot be serviced. The interest outpaces the output. Markets begin to hyperventilate. Governments don't just watch, they intervene. They have to. So, the system is fed more money. Not because the body is healthy and growing, but because the body is addicted and the withdrawal would be fatal. This is why central banks have become the most powerful institutions on earth. They are the new high priests. But here's the secret they don't teach in school. They don't create wealth, they manage belief. They lower interest rates to whisper to you, borrow, spend, build. They raise rates to scream, stop, the fire is too hot. They print to stabilize the floor beneath our feet. They tighten to contain the wreckage of their own previous interventions. Every move is reactive. There is no off switch on this machine. There are only dials, levers, emergency tools kept behind glass. And the tragedy of the design is that each intervention, each fix, merely ensures that the next crisis will be larger, louder, and more expensive. Over the last few decades, something strange happened. The soul of the economy shifted. Money stopped funding productivity, the making of things, the solving of problems, and started chasing returns. We stopped building homes to live in. We started building assets to flip. Homes became investments. Education became a debt obligation. Healthcare became a line item on a hedge fund's balance sheet. Even your survival has been financialized. The real economy, the one where you sweat, where you create, where you serve, didn't disappear. It was just overshadowed. It was dwarfed by markets that reward speculation 10 times faster than they reward creation. This is why your groceries cost more while your paycheck feels lighter. This is why assets outperform labor. This is why, in this version of the world, ownership beats effort every single time. The system rewards proximity to the point of money creation. It does not reward contribution to the community. And here's the most uncomfortable part, the part we don't discuss at dinner. No one is outside this system, not the worker in the factory, not the billionaire in the penthouse, not the critic writing manifestos against the machine. Your savings account depends on the machine's heartbeat. Your job is a spark in its engine. Your government is its largest debtor. Even if you see the cracks, even if you understand the illusion, you still participate. You have to. Because opting out doesn't protect you. It doesn't make you a hero. It just isolates you. To step away from the system is to step into the cold. So the illusion continues. Not because we are stupid, not because we are blind, but because the cost of disbelief feels higher than the cost of belief. We stay in the theater because we're afraid of what's outside the doors. And so, quietly, without a single vote being cast, without a meeting in a smoke-filled room, A silent agreement exists between all of us. We all agree not to pull at the thread. We all agree to keep walking, to keep buying, to keep believing that the numbers on the screen are real. Because deep down, in the quietest part of our minds, we know exactly what happens if the thread comes loose, and we aren't ready to find out. You know, we're taught that banks make money, but they don't actually create it out of thin air. They create it out of us, out of our collective belief that everyone is going to pay their debts. It's basically a giant global pinky promise. We believe growth is permanent. We believe the government will catch us if we trip. That's the invisible glue. As long as you and I trust the numbers on our phones, the system works. Credit flows, markets go up, and money feels real. But here's the thing, and it's a little uncomfortable. Money isn't backed by gold anymore. It's backed by confidence. And confidence is a fragile thing. When it's there, everything feels solid. But the second it cracks, reason goes out the window. Panic takes over. History shows us that collapses don't start with empty vaults. They start with a whisper of doubt. So, it makes you wonder, is money actually real? Or is it just the most successful hallucination we've ever agreed to share? I'm curious what you think. Is the system actually broken? Or is the illusion the only thing keeping us afloat? Comment below, because this conversation matters more than you think.